Okay, so we'll start. So it's the second Sedra in Chumash DEVARIM. It's called Ves Hanan. Ves Hanan means beseech, plead, beg, entreat. And this is Moshe Rabbeinu asking God to let him into Eretz Canaan, to turn it into Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem doesn't let. And what this Sedra has is chock-a-block with many of, as you know, as we were saying last week, and as you know, Parshat DEVARIM is Mishnah Torah. It means it's a summary of the first 4 books. And insofar as it's a summary, the Sedras are very full of the happenings that they're summarizing, and this is a Sedra which is an example of that. It's got so much in it. It's got the second part of the Shema in it. It's got the 10 Commandments. It's got the whole story of the Orei Miklot. Yep. It's got concepts of Hashem's unity. So, there are many, many sikhs, and many of them are very exciting because they lever open the secrets of many secrets of Kabbalah and Chassidus. And so I thought tonight, instead of just doing one in greater depth, I'd just take you through a few of them because the concepts are individually so important that it's worth just summarizing a few of them together. So we'll start with this, that at the end of the Sedra, there's a section on Orei Miklot. Orei Miklot means cities of refuge. So let me just quickly tell you the halakha before we get to the point that the Rebbe makes in this sikha. And this sikha was said right at the beginning of his Nasias, right at the beginning of the Rebbe's. It's from volume 2 for those who want to look it up and who send me emails that I don't mention the sources. And I really do try. This is from volume 2 of Likutei Sikhs. And the Rebbe talks here about Orei Miklot, but first I need to explain the halakha. You know, Jewish law is, in some areas, gaspingly different to the English law that we're used to. And this isn't a political cheer, and I'm not going to go into comparisons, but suffice it to say that Am Yisrael, unlike people who march on the Harbour Bridge and all of that, we have been a peaceful nation, living ordered, structured, kind, charitable lives for 3,500 years because of our legal system. Now, it may surprise you to know that we believe passionately in the death penalty. And it's extraordinary if you know anything of, I mean, I have the misfortune of knowing something about this professionally because of the fact that I'm a lawyer. But, you know, for example, on television tonight, they announced that a serial murderer who's found guilty of killing 9 people is coming out on bail after 20 years or 26 years. And instead of killing that man at the time we're not talking about whether there's any doubt that he's guilty. We're talking about somebody who is found guilty for excellent reasons, guilty 9 times of murder. I don't know if you know, have a guess how much it costs you and me as taxpayers to keep a man in jail for 1 year. Have a guess.
200 grand.
On the knocker. It's $200,000
A year.
a year.
So you work that out for 26. 26 by 200, that's
What's 26?
another 26 years. Isn't he being...
Oh, I see. Yes.
So 26 by
52.
200,
That's
that's
right.
5.5 million.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we pay $5.5 million to keep this piece of garbage alive
Yeah.
when he's killed, without any issue of doubt, 9 human beings.
It's madness.
So in Jewish law, somebody kills somebody intentionally, murder, as opposed to manslaughter. I suppose everybody knows the difference, but if somebody murders somebody and it is proven that he's murdered, and the basis of proof is very rigorous. You've got to understand the death penalty was used very infrequently in our history, but it's the best deterrent because, as you probably know, there's no repeats. You know, you kill somebody, he doesn't do it again, and for murder is one of the things where you have the death penalty. Who administers the death penalty? The relatives. But they can only do that after a judgment has been given in that he's guilty, and if he's guilty, the relatives, he's taken out, and the relatives kill him by whatever means there is in relation to whatever crime we're talking about. Now, what about if somebody kills another human, a human being kills another human being accidentally? In other words, without any hate, without any malice. He's using an axe. The handle of the axe flies off through, not through any negligence, but through
Malfunction.
whatever, and it kills somebody by accident. So that in English law that would be termed manslaughter. We can't use that term because there are tests as to whether any intention was there, and whether the Torah uses the word that he hates him. So if there's no hate and it's a total accident, the relatives still have the right to kill him. Why? Because relatives have the right to take avenging on somebody that kills. So, but because it was accidental and because there was no intention, there was no malice, in English law we use the Latin phrase called mens rea, which means that he has an intention, an evil intent, a criminal intention. If that doesn't exist, that killer can run to what's called a city of refuge, which Hashem told Moshe to build 3 of them when they got to Eretz Yisrael. And these cities, called Orei Miklot, cities of refuge, the killer can live there until the Kohen Gadol dies, and providing he stays within that city of refuge, the relatives can't do anything to him. And if they do something to him, they are guilty of murder. So the laws in relation to Orei Miklot, cities of refuge, are many. One of the main groups of laws is identifying the city of refuge. So the city of refuge had to have a large paved road going to it, 32 meters, I think, or 32 feet, I can't remember which, can't be, because it's not a meter and it's not a foot, it's a Torah measurement. I just can't remember what that translates to, but it was wide. An arm, 32, yeah, it could be, 32 amas wide, I think.
Yeah.
So, and it had to be paved, and wherever there was an intersection to get to it, there had to be a sign saying Miklot, Miklot. There had to be a sign saying Miklot, which direction it was, and there were people who stood at that sign and announced, all right, Miklot, Miklot, this way, to the city of refuge. So the Rebbe asks in this Sikha, in volume 2, the Sikha, very interesting, what's it got to do with us? We don't have that legal system. We don't have anybody running to an Orei Miklot. And so why do we have to know about the roads being paved? And why do we have to know about the signs and people indicating this? So the Rebbe takes a tangent and explains something that we've learned together many times, and if the Rebbe can do it many times, we can. There is nothing in Gashmias, in physicality, which doesn't have its source in Ruchnias, in spirituality. So anything in physicality is a product of its spiritual source. So if you have Orei Miklot in Gashmias, it means that the source of those Orei Miklot is in Ruchnias, is in spirituality. So when we talk about Orei Miklot, the Gashmias, we have to understand what it means Baruchnias. What does it mean Baruchnias? It means that there are times in each Jews, we're talking about Torah, so we're talking about Jews. I mean, it may apply to non-Jews, that's not the point of this. The point is that you and I are going to have times in our lives when we are exposed to threats. Those threats can be real or imagined, but one of the things that we learn from this Sikha, the Rebbe explains in this, is that because there are Orei Miklot mentioned in the Torah with all the attendant laws that we have in Mishnah and Gemara, it means that you and I have a city of refuge to run to in times of anxiety and distress and threat. What is that? That is the words of Torah. That it is an enormous safety zone for a Jew, that he learns to spend time accessing the relaxation and serenity that you have when you sit and learn Torah. And look, for everybody, the Torah that they learn is different. Some people like learning halakha. Some people like learning Mishnah or Gemara. Gemara is endless argument, backwards and forwards, left and right, backwards and forwards. All true, there are no contradictions. But you get different opinions, and those opinions are hammered out in the most unbelievably detailed way. Some people love this. Some people love this argument backwards and forwards. Some people like to learn Chassidus, where you get openings to your own psyche and your own way of reacting to things and your own emotion, and it becomes very important to learn how to control those emotions, what's in charge, whether seichel is in charge of midos, whether intellect is in charge of emotion, or is emotion in charge of intellect. Let's start with that. It's a very basic thing. Tanya starts with that. Tanya, which is the Torah Shabbat of Chassidus, asks you to consider the question of whether you have the choice to fall in love with your secretary and abandon your wife and children, or whether you don't have the choice. In other words, does seichel rule does intellect rule emotion? We couldn't help it, we fell in love. Or does it, sorry, I'm giving that as the opposite example. If does emotion rule intellect, I'm sorry, I fell in love, couldn't help it? Or does intellect rule emotion? Of course you can help it. And the moment you feel a level of attraction, you can walk out the door. You can find another way of dealing with it. What rules what? So how do you know this? You learn Chassidus and you learn this. If you go to a therapist, he'll tell you something different. He'll tell you that you've got an obligation to realize your potential and to whatever it is. And yeah, of course you can have that lady. Why not? You're going to go to your grave and not realize all the potential opportunities that God's given you. So whether whatever part of Torah you like to learn, and let's say that, for example, it's Chassidus. This is a Chassidus Shia. When you are learning that Torah, you feel differently. You feel more serene. You feel more relaxed. You feel more in charge of your emotions. And that, explains the Rebbe, is what the spiritual city of refuge, the spiritual Orei Miklot, is. It's the opportunity to enter into a safety zone. And now, there's some parts of Torah that, for example, if I was stressed, God forbid, I mean, who cares about Kremnizer, but if some people are stressed, they're not going to want to learn halakha. Maybe the halakha will stress them more. The details of that. I'll give you an example. You've got to put on tefillin every day. How do you know what tefillin means? You only know what tefillin means because of the oral law. The oral law in the Mishnah tells you that it's boxes made of leather with certain things in it and all the requirements of it. And then the Talmud then extrapolates on that and explains where it has to be, and that between the eyes doesn't really mean between the eyes, it means on the forehead, whatever the rules are. Now, some people, if they're stressed, they don't want to learn rules. They want to learn Chassidus. On the other hand, some people for whom the Chassidus is too difficult, they don't want to hear the secrets of life. They just want to take their mind off what their problem is. So for them, learning halakha is terrific. So whichever way you are, there is Torah for you in this. The city of refuge applies to all Jews in different aspects. So what's this business about a paved road? It means that the access, the Rebbe explains, to your own Orei Miklot has to be accessible. So, for example, you have to have Torah in your house. The Rebbe had a whole mitzvah campaign for a house to be full of holy books, or to have holy books in it, to have a library, whatever size you can afford or place in your house. You have to have holy books in it. Why? Because if you have them, you'll use them. If you don't have them, you can't use them. And if you're stressed and want to go to your Orei Miklot, then you need some materials to use. And that's what we're talking about, a paved road. And then, as I explained, part of the halakha is that there had to be people there that indicated Miklot, this way. You have to go this way. So the Rebbe explains in that is the fundamental. That's the fundamental raison d'etre. Hi, darling. This is my baby daughter. She's visiting from Melbourne.
Oh.
And she told me that when she was growing up, she doesn't remember a Tuesday where there wasn't a shir.
Oh, really?
Good night.
Good night, darling. So this is the raison d'etre of shluchim.
Yeah.
That the Rebbe sent shluchim to communities where where people know nothing. It's actually getting the level of knowledge is in many areas is getting worse, and they go there and they stand and they teach at the beginning unwilling participants, and then hopefully some that become much more willing to learn Torah and to learn that they do have Orei Miklot to run to. Now, science I don't think I'm going to have time for that. I'm just, let's leave that there. And
Do we have any idea how many people actually lived in those Orei Miklot?
no, I don't know. I'm sure people do. I don't know.
The Levites lived there.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
There is something else I do need to tell you that
But I mean, they would have been very small in number because it was only applicable for people who killed others.
no,
by
they
accident.
were cities of ordinary people, but
Yes.
they were nominated. Those 3 cities were nominated.
Yes, and then there were 2 on the east bank.
There are going to be 3 more
Yes.
at the time of Mashiach. There were 6 altogether. But these were regular cities with people doing ordinary farming and ordinary, not all killers. But a killer, if he ran to that city, got protection.
But it was only somebody who'd killed by mistake.
Yes.
So how many people could there have been in an entire society?
No,
Who
in
killed
that
by
city,
mistake?
99.9% of them are ordinary people who aren't killers.
Yeah, that's right.
But where the killer can have refuge by going there.
Yeah.
And providing he lives in that city, he's safe.
Fine. Until the Kohen
And
passes away.
until the Kohen Gadol
But
dies.
what Robert's point is that how many of those people were there? That's the
There would have been very few in number.
Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
That's what I was.
Yeah,
Accidentally fell on the knife 5 times.
yeah.
But it could have been negligence as well. You know, if
It
you-
can
if
be
you're driving
it can be negligence as well. Yes. There's one other point that needs to be made about the ruchnius side of the physical protection. There are 2 directions that these people's calling out miklot represent spiritually. Until the Baal Shem Tov, the tzaddikim who were teaching would set up camp in their city, and people would come to them. People would come to them to learn. Rebbes had courts. When I say courts, they had a place where they lived, and you put down a lamp, and that draws people to the light, and that's what happened. And then came the Baal Shem Tov, who wasn't satisfied with that, and he used to go out with his Hebra and go to totally strange places and teach people in those places by example and by lessons. And one of the points of understanding this, the significance of indicating where the Orei Miklot are, there are 2 ways to do it. You can stand at the signpost and scream out Miklot, Miklot. In other words, you can stay in your hometown, learn Torah, and seek to teach other people Torah. Good. But the other way, the way of the Baal Shem Tov, was to go out and find people. So the Rebbe sends shluchim to Timbuktu, a young family who've just got married, or with 1 or 2 children, and they go to a place where there's no mikveh, where there's no other children for their children to grow up with, so that they're growing up with people who aren't shoyim Shabbos, who don't keep kashrus, who don't, and they were, in the beginning, they were terrified that
I was starting from scratch.
they were terrified that it would spoil their children. Okay, they would go and help other people, but what was the risk? The risk was their own family. So at one Farbrengen, the Rebbe said that the children of the Shluchim are his responsibility. And the incredible thing is that you have Shluchim who went to Nowhereville and built huge communities there. And their children and grandchildren are unbelievable.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if there's a final part to this, that we Jews have to understand that to whatever limited level we think we are Shluchim. We're Shluchim of Hashem, and we have a job to do to call out Miklot. We have a job to do to introduce other Jews to our heritage. And the mitzvah of Peru Veru, which means to be fruitful and multiply, at a Gashmias level means to have children. And it's a very important mitzvah. It's one, start Bereshis and there you are. But at a spiritual level, this mitzvah is incumbent on everybody as well, because we have a job to make other Jews be Jews. And that obligation is an obligation on every Jew. Where do we have that obligation? From the mitzvah of Peru Veru, of being fruitful and multiplying. Being fruitful and multiplying means you can be fruitful and multiply physically, but you also have, and this is what I was trying to explain at the beginning, what the Rebbe was saying, that there is a spiritual root to every physical mitzvah. That you have the mitzvah of being fruitful and multiplying spiritually. That means influencing another yid to be more observant, to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. Now, in some places, you can do that by talking, giving shiurim. There are many people who don't want to listen to shiurim. They don't have the patience. They don't believe you necessarily yet. So you need people who are walking examples. This is what it means to stand at the crossroad and call out Miklot, Miklot. That to be an example of somebody who does keep Shabbos, who doesn't scream at his wife, who doesn't beat up his children, who lives a Torah life. And you know, there's a test for whether you're doing something in a kodesh manner, in a holy manner, or whether you're doing something in a narcissistic, selfish, self-gratifying manner only. Now, everybody understands that to some extent we're all selfish, and to some extent we're all seeking gratification. That's all normal behavior of the nefesh habahamis, of the animal soul. But that is consistent with klippa. That is consistent with the negative. The positive is when we are focused on doing something for somebody else. And, you know, it's an extraordinary thing. It's very hard to explain to people when they're starting off. But, you know, you keep Torah for a certain period of time and you try and focus, if you're sincere, try and focus on the welfare of other people. I mean, let's go to the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael. The mitzvah of Avos Yisrael is one of the hardest mitzvahs in the Torah for most people. Why? Understand why. Because the mitzvah is given to you about another Jew who you don't like. It can't be another Jew that you do like. If it's another Jew that you do like, there's no mitzvah.
Yeah.
Where's the mitzvah? You've been given an order to love another Jew, right? It's no order if you love them, if you like them so much anyway. It's the guy you can't stand. It's the guy that's harmed you. It's the guy that's getting in your way, parks over your driveway, has his kid play the drums at 1 o'clock in the morning, never says hello. They're difficult. You've got to put a new fence between the two houses. The law is that you've got to pay half and half for the fence. He doesn't think the new fence is necessary. It's falling down. Too bad, he doesn't care. What do you do with this guy? And there's a mitzvah to love him as you love yourself. Who can do this? Now, if you can only do it if you understand that the mitzvah is you're dealing with the mitzvah. The more you can't stand him, the better you're doing the mitzvah. Because if you like him, there's no mitzvah. Now, this is the same mantra that Kedusha is with other people, for other people's benefit. When you are serving yourself, that isn't Kodesh. That's natural. That's Nefesh Abahamis. Every animal does that. Every animal looks for pleasure and avoids pain. You and me too. But you have to understand that that's got very little to do with Kedusha. And to do with Kedusha, you need to be able to value and improve other people. And we learn an incredible thing in Chassidus, that the more a person does that, and it doesn't feel natural, and it doesn't feel comfortable, but the more you do it, the happier you are. We learn, and it's not a goal. Our goal is not happiness. Our goal is to serve Hashem. That's what a Jew's job is. But you have to understand that we have an overriding requirement to serve Hashem besimcha, happily. So being happy is an obligation. So one of the ways of increasing your level of well-being and happiness, genuine happiness as opposed to just pleasure, is to do things for other people. The more you do things for other people, the better you feel, and that's not a selfish thing. That's a product of this aspect of Kedusha. We're running out of time, so I'm going to move off from Orei Mikla. Let's L'chaim. Let's talk about this Moshe Rabbeinu not being able to get into Eretz Yisrael. 515 times he davened to ask God to let him in, until Hashem said, enough, I don't want to hear it again, ever. 515 times, I'll tell you how it's calculated. It's Ma'ariv, Shachris, Mincha, for whatever the number of days is, that adds up to 515. 3 into 515 were the number of days that he was asking Hashem.
171 2/3.
Is it?
Yeah.
So that's how many days he was doing it. And Hashem said, stop, I'm not interested. So what was his sin? Why wasn't he allowed in? I'm sure you all remember. It was that Hashem told him to talk to the rock,
And he hit it.
and the rock would give water, and he hit the rock. And that was his sin. So let me ask you, let's consider together, what does it mean, a sin? So first of all, the Hebrew word is het. And het doesn't really mean a sin, it means a deficiency.
What about Avera?
Huh?
Avera.
Well, Avera is a transgression, but het is worse.
Okay.
Het is a deficiency. So let's understand the normal concept of doing a sin. The normal concept of doing a sin is that you have a Yetzer Hara. Everybody has a Yetzer Hara. And you have a lust, which is born from your Nefesh Abahamis through your Yetzer Hara. And you have a struggle with your Nefesh Elokis of whether to give in to that lust or not. Sometimes you fail, sometimes you succeed. When you succeed, you add light, which is a complex thing. We'll talk about that when it comes time to do the Bossi Lagani Maimorim. But when you fail and you taste the pleasure of the Avera, you add darkness, or you fail to bring light. So, but Chaim Yankel has a beautiful new secretary, and he's a normal red-blooded human being, and she likes him, and she makes it obvious that she's available, and his struggle now is how he behaves, and that struggle is if he gives in to his Yetzer Hara and accesses the pleasures that come from this lady, he has committed a het. How is it possible for a Jew to do that? Because he gets amnesia for the moment, and he convinces himself that, by the way, God's his really good buddy, which he is. He's his father. He loves him. He understands him, and he'll understand. He's got particular prolectivity for this, and his Father in heaven will understand. Or he's not looking, or he's asleep, or whatever he makes up it to be. And then when he commits, but what happens to him when he does this sin, is that he, without knowing this consciously, sinks deeper into his own level of darkness, which we'll have to do a whole shir on this, because this has to do with happiness and real happiness versus the gratification that comes simply from the pleasure. And you have to understand that we're not talking about a minor little bit of pleasure, whether you eat a jelly bean or not. We're talking about a real pleasure. We're talking about something that you really want. And if it's forbidden, the difficulty of saying no to it is immense. Now I want to ask you a question. Moshe Rabbeinu is told by Hashem to talk to the rock. And he doesn't talk to the rock, he hits the rock. And let me make it harder for us all. Some years earlier, Hashem told him to hit the rock. And the rock brought water. Now we're 40 years later, and we're about to enter Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem, and there's no water, and the people are complaining to Moshe, and Moshe goes to God, and God says, hit this rock. And Moshe gets it wrong. He speaks to this rock. I'm sorry. Moshe gets it wrong. He speaks to the wrong rock. The wrong rock doesn't give out any water. So now he hits the rock. And when it hits the rock, it still gets even harder. The rock gushes water. And Hashem says, because of that, you're not getting into Eretz Yisrael. Now understand what that is for Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu's whole life is Torah. He's given his whole life for Torah. He's given his whole life for Am Yisrael. When there's the golden calf episode, he goes up on the mountain and he says to God, if you're not going to forgive them, write me out of your Torah. I'm not interested. He loves Am Yisrael unconditionally, every single person. For him, he doesn't have a mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael. Right? He just loves every Jew. He sees the way they were born, what their parenting was, what their background was, what their tests in life had been, what their sibling rivalry was, what the persecution they got because they were a bit stupid, or they were bad at sport or bad at football, and the kids wouldn't join them up in the teams, so they're resentful, and that makes them spiteful. He sees all of that, and he doesn't hold any of that against any of them. He loves all of them, so the mitzvah doesn't even apply to him. This man who begs Hashem 515 times to let him into Eretz Yisrael after his qualifications in his life, and Hashem says no. And Hashem says no, why? Because you failed to bring me into the world. we'll come back to that in a minute.
You felt being walked into the world?
Huh?
You felt being walked into the world?
Me, Hashem,
Me,
God, a Giloi Elokus, a revelation. The whole business of our lives is to infuse nature with godliness. You failed to do that by hitting the rock. You didn't listen to me. You hit the rock and you didn't speak to the rock.
Still think it's too severe.
Okay, in a minute. So you can't say that this was an issue of Yetzer Hara.
No.
You can't say that Moshe Rabbeinu had this big lust desire to hit the rock rather than speak to the rock. You can't say that. Because, first of all, he has no Yetzer Hara. He's a tzaddik.
But it was maybe a lack of faith in Hashem.
That's the issue. That's the issue, that the real translation of het is a deficiency. And there is a deficiency there. And that's what his punishment was. We'll see that punishment isn't the right word, it's a consequence. Because, well, let's deal with that right now. Hashem says, you're quoting to me that you spent your life looking after your people, and I salute you for that. Ashakoyach. But that, therefore, you belong with them, not going into Eretz Canaan, go into Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Canaan to make it Eretz Yisrael. That's for the next generation. You don't belong to the next generation. You were the leader of this generation. You, as the leader of this generation, you feel so strongly about it. Oh, I've left out a step. I'm sorry. I need to put that point on hold and go back a step. When Moshe hits the rock, rather than speak to it, the Midrash has a fascinating conversation between God and Moshe. God asked Moshe, why? What'd you do that for? And Moshe says to God this, he says, I couldn't allow Am Yisrael to have a future in which you could say, this is Moshe talking to God, in which you could say that, how can you be so disobedient with my mitzvahs? I told Moshe Rabbeinu to do something to a rock, and a rock did it. A dumb, inert rock. Listen to me. But you, and even a rock can listen to me. So therefore, you will have a taina to Am Yisrael, every Jew in the future, when they don't listen to you, because you'll be able to say that even a rock listened, let alone a human being. So I hit the rock. I hit the rock so that argument can't be available to you. So he had a noble, there are 200 explanations why he hit the rock. One explanation is that he did it last time. One explanation was that he didn't have enough emunah, and he thought that maybe there was some mistake. There are plenty of reasons that are given, but the bottom line is that you can't say that this was a sin of his Yetzer Hara. You can't say that. He didn't have a Yetzer Hara. You can't say that, like with the secretary, it would feel great and he failed, because there was nothing to feel great about. There's no pleasure in hitting a rock. There's no gratification that comes from hitting the rock. He did it for noble reasons, but because he didn't listen to Hashem, even to that tiny microscopic level, for a person of his stature as a tzaddik, of the Mani Gadol of every generation, of the Rebbe of every generation, of the Moshe Rabbeinu of every generation, he had the consequence that he asked for. The consequence that he asked for was, that since he hit the rock because he didn't want anybody to be able to criticize Am Yisrael, since he was so involved with Am Yisrael. Hashem said, "You're so involved, you have to stay here, not enter into Eretz Yisrael." Now, what does that mean for you and me who aren't Moshe Rabbeinu? Obviously, we have to start with those things where your Yetzer Hara is tempting you. But there are plenty of things in life where we make choices which are choices which seem to have a logical result which is pleasing at some level, in various levels of intensity in terms of pleasing. And the question is how you regulate that with this issue of, are you bringing more light into the world or not? Are you bringing more light into the world means, are you assisting the business of revealing godliness in Gashmias, in physicality? Because that's the reason we're alive. And I keep saying this because the Rebbe keeps repeating it, that Tzemach Tzedek says in Derek Mitzvah Sefer, in famous work on Chassidus, that the only reason, not one reason, the only reason that the neshama has a yerida into a guf, that the soul has a descent into the body, is to spend 60, 70, 120 years in that body overcoming challenges. That's the only reason there's the descent. God sends the neshama into the guf, to overcome challenges. Now, we don't want the challenges, so we ask Hashem to take them away, and that's a different story as well. We'll learn that some other time. But the fact is that we are going to you have to expect that your life is full of challenges, and everybody's life is. And the reality is that those challenges, far from being something to grumble at and to fight and it's necessary to understand that they are at one level a gift from Hashem. They're the very purpose of your existence. And that is how we make a dira b'taktoinim. That's how we make a dwelling place for Hashem in the physical world. So whether you are an ordinary guy who's going to struggle with the issue of what he does with the secretary, or whether you're Moshe Rabbeinu, at the end of the day, the pristine truth is that we need to be fully aligned with our God. And the product of that is a different life. It's life versus existence. And it seems very hard at the time. You know, at the time when somebody says, "Can you do me a favor and do this?" and it's going to cost you in time or money or effort or credibility, and you balance the good that you do to that other person with what you don't get for yourself, it's a very difficult equation for most people. And it requires strong training and practice. You've got to go to the spiritual gym and learn this over and over and over again. The proper result is the one that, at the end of the day, is obvious to you. By the way, that's another thing. It's amazing that people don't understand that the correct choice is blazingly obvious. You just don't want to hear it, don't want to think it, don't want to see it. But it's blazingly obvious. And yet, to take that blazingly obvious choice for Kedusha, which means helping somebody else rather than yourself, is very difficult. And it's only very difficult until you experience it enough to know that it works. That's the reality. I just want to do something from the Ten Commandments quickly. So l'chaim, l'chaim. You know, this is the second time the Ten Commandments are articulated in the Torah. The first time is in Parshas Yisroi, and this it's in Parshas V'eschanan. And they're the same 10 commandments, obviously. Let's just talk about the commandment to keep Shabbos. In Parshas Yisroi, it says, Zochor, remember the Shabbos and keep it holy. In Parshas V'eschanan, it says, Shomer, keep, guard the Shabbos and keep it holy. So the commentators ask, which is it? First of all, did Torah make a mistake? Is it Zochor, remember, or is it Shomer, guard? So the answer is that Meforshim explained that Hashem said both at the same time, and all Jews heard both at the same time, which is a physical impossibility. It's a miraculous situation. So the question is why? And in Chassidus, which teaches the soul of Torah rather than the words, rather than the body of Torah, it explains this, and it's important for us because there's a deep secret to one's own well-being and happiness in relation to this. So let me give you an example. And first of all, Zochor is first. Remembering it is first, and observing it is second. Why? Because Zochor, remembering it, is a positive. Let me give you an example. You remember Shabbos, and what do you remember? You remember candles, you remember Kiddush, you remember an extra l'chaim or 3, 3 meals for the day. We have the very encouraging news that you're allowed to be a glutton on Shabbos. The more you force feed your goof with the delicacies that there are, the better it is. The rest of the week we frown on that. You know, you should know that in Jewish tradition, we don't go to restaurants and to eat special kinds of food that's there and dress up in special clothes, listen to special music. That's considered very, very grob. You know, we make a bracha before we eat, we make a bracha after we finish eating, and we eat in order to give the body strength to learn Torah and do mitzvahs and be a Jew. We don't do it to go and listen to an orchestra and in a special suit and clothes and no. On the other hand, Shabbos, eat whatever you can, the best sholent and the best herring and the best l'chaim that you can afford, whatever it is. So that's remembering Shabbos. Observing Shabbos means that you don't turn on the television, you don't drive in the car, you don't carry in the public domain, all the laws and restrictions of Shabbos. Why did Hashem say them both together? Because one on their own, they don't work. It's not enough. So I'll give you an example. Remembering Shabbos, you get a lot of people who go to shul on Shabbos. Okay, they go to shul in the morning, and they watch the football in the afternoon. I'm not criticizing. I'm just trying to explain an issue. They remember the Shabbos. They remember it's Shabbos. They go to shul. They even tell you they enjoy it. They like going to shul. They like Friday night. They like having the kids over on Friday night and the grandchildren over. And they like eating together and being together on Friday night. Then they go to shul. They love to daven to Hashem. They like talking to their God. They like being privately with their God and talking to him. They like the Kiddush afterwards. They like a l'chaim afterwards. They like to come home and have a good, big fress at lunchtime. And then with a full stomach, they go and turn on the television and watch Easts play whoever it is. And that's very valuable to them. And they'll tell you that gives them a better Shabbos. They had more pleasure on Shabbos. And isn't the job to have pleasure on Shabbos? So that's remembering the Shabbos, and it has a value. But the danger is that when you finish lunch, you turn on the television. Why? Because you're only remembering it. You're not observing it. Observing it means to be mindful of all, not only the positives, but all the negatives, all the restrictions, the things that you can't do, that you can't drive, you can't go shopping, you can't do business, you can't write, you can't, all the restrictions that we have, these are the observances of Shabbos. And I'll give you the same example as the shul. You get a guy who is so observant, they've moved to a new house, and the Chabad house, or the Chabad house that used to be down the road's closed. The shliach died, or God forbid, or had to go somewhere, and there's no shul nearby. The nearest shul is a 7 kilometer walk. And he comes to you and he says, it's too far, especially with children, it's too far to walk. So I'm showing the Shabbos. I mean, I wouldn't turn on a light, and I wouldn't turn on the TV, and I wouldn't pick up my phone, but I don't go to shul because it's too far to walk, and so I'm going to stay home. I'm going to keep Shabbos at home. I'm going to observe Shabbos at home. Now, I want to tell you that guy, unless he's really, really, really diligent, is going to give in to things. And slowly but surely, those observances will be broken down. Because we need each other. We need each other in shul. We need the reinforcement. We need the remembering part, the positive part, to keep the negative part functioning in a healthy, normal manner. And that's why both of the mitzvahs were given at the one time, and that's why you must have both the positive and the negative. So what's the summary? The summary is that ultimately, the terrifying thing, if you allow yourself to think about it, is that your own welfare and happiness and contentment and serenity really lies with you and me. And how do we know? It's really not difficult. We just have to learn Torah and keep mitzvahs. We have to have our own Orei Miklot. We have to know that it's available. We have to be able to keep the mitzvahs in the full aspect of them, the negative as well as the positive. You can't pick and choose which ones you want to do, and you have to. And when we sin, we have to be aware of the fact that sin is going to be a product of where we are holding in our life. And you can't compare it to somebody else and you say, but he's got 3 secretaries and I've only taken 1 secretary. So therefore, I don't, my sin isn't as bad as his sin. Your sin is bad for your sin. Your test was 1 secretary. His test is 3 secretaries. You can't compare your tests. Why can't you compare your tests? Because you've got the equipment to deal with 1 secretary, and he's got the equipment to deal with 3 secretaries. And Hashem set it up like that he has the equipment for his tests, and you have the equipment for your tests. And no matter whether it seems to be a massive test or a tiny little thing like, we're not Moshe Rabbeinu, so the hitting of the rock and the speaking to the rock would be no doubt counted as negligible for us. But the fact is that everybody's going to be tested to their ability to manage the situation. And everyone has the capacity to manage the situation. Otherwise, by Ashkaka Protis, you wouldn't get it. You wouldn't have it thrust at you. So let's hope we can deal with it. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Excellent.